Welcome to the Ultra Ascent Podcast. Your hosts, Alex Proctor and Mark Dowdle, are two aspiring professional runners with the goal to take you on a journey of making that dream a reality. You'll be given an inside look to what life is like as an unsponsored athlete and all the trials and tribulations that it entails. Along the way, they'll share how they train, what races and challenges are currently on their calendar, and how they aim to land support from brands. Alex intends to dominate in the professional trail running sector, taking souls and finishing on top the podium at the most premier trail races around the world, while Mark seeks to find new ways to discover the unknown and self-made, not yet accomplished ultra distance challenges. Let's get into the show.
Episode 4 of the Ultra Ascent Podcast with your hosts, Mark Dowdle and Alex Proctor. We are back in business.
I mean, I guess if they're here at episode 4, they're still enjoying what we have to say so far, so I guess that's a good thing.
It is one good thing.
That is one good thing. What's not a good thing
Uh-oh.
is you bait me into it, man. You make me want to get let's start out with group runs.
Okay.
Group runs are taking over the running and ultra running community. And I've got some beef with them. I started a run club called the Anti-Run Club Run Club, where we do everything but what the standardized run clubs are doing nowadays. Where do we begin? Where should I just talk about my issue with them? So my issue with these run clubs, let's just dive right into it. Part of my issue with these run clubs is the focus seems to be everything but the aspect of getting people to enjoy running. Whereas, I've read up on some forums, I've watched some
Reddit?
read some or watched some TikTok videos of like people going to run clubs, and you might have 100 people that show up, but really not a ton of people are communicating with each other outside of the small group that they went with. People are really just looking forward to getting drunk at the bar after that the meetup ground is, and it's a lot of people looking to hook up, and it is just replacing going to the bar with a short run beforehand. And it's not that people will say, well, at least they're getting people out to run. At least they're getting people to get outside and move. And I'm like, to a certain degree, yes. But in the same regard, it almost feels like if a bar were to say that we're a place that has flourishing conversation that is like helpful or beneficial to people's well-being, health, and betterment of society, when we all know that people just go to the bar to get drunk and the conversations that happen at a bar aren't fruitful majority of the time. And so when you see people that only show up to run, to go to these run clubs, it doesn't speak to what I personally encourage people to get out to. Like, my goal is to help people build, which I'm assuming yours is as well, but the goal is to get people to get into a consistent practice, because the benefits of running, not just on your physical health, but your mental health and your overall well-being. And I feel like this run group culture is geared more towards hype culture, encouraging drinking and hookup culture, and building a brand that really doesn't benefit the people showing up. It's really meant to benefit the people at the top who just want to kind of push out their brand and make money off merchandise. So there's a lot thrown in there, but I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah,
and see where it lands
at the basis of run clubs, running with people in general is a fun thing to do. It is enjoyable. I love running with people. I go to run clubs quite a bit, since I moved to Salt Lake, and just getting to meet new people in the area. It's probably the easiest way to do that if you're a new runner in an area. But like you said, I don't enjoy a lot of the other aspects that, I know it's a part of growth and it's a part of, being marketable, but I just don't think that like my idea of enjoying a run comes from being tried to be sold something or buy into something or have to feel pressured to go somewhere after to drink or do something like that. But that's not usually the case with the run clubs here in particular that I've been to. One in particular that like I really love and I'm really good friends with the I don't know, the manager. I don't know.
The group organizer.
The group organizer, the leader, Zach. Trails with Zach is his Instagram handle. Zachary Frisch. He's one of my good friends that I've met out here now. I had DM'd him prior to moving out here, and he just looked like someone that would get after it day in, day out. He was focused on this year. One of his goals is to get over 1 million feet of vert. So with his run clubs, I think it's fun because it's not like the trailhead you're showing up to, but sometimes it goes awry because the people in that group, I would just say they're kind of savages where no one can really say no to any like route modifications. So if people are like, yeah, it was gonna be like a 2 to 7 mile run up the canyon, pretty easy, and then someone suggests, oh, let's go hit this peak or hit this mountain, then everyone's like, all right, we're doing it. And so I think with like run clubs like that where it's focused on bonding around actually running and adventuring and getting to talk to people as you suffer a little bit helps. I would prefer it that way because I don't want to. For me, running around the city for 3 miles and then going to drink after doesn't really attract the kind of people that I would identify with or see myself enjoying more time outside the run club with. With the Trails with Zach run club, there's a lot of people that I've met. We've gone on runs outside of that because it seems like they're people that would do more than just drink after, So with that being said, it looks like you're frozen for a second. It looks like your screen sometimes freezes, and I'm like,
yeah, so does yours. So does yours. But it sounds like the run clubs that I don't know that we've identified as the ones that are solid and I'll say good. They foster more opportunities to run outside of just that group, whereas some of these other run clubs, they just foster unhealthy, like not all drinking is bad, but if it's just fostering and encouraging you to meet up with people to drink afterwards and a hookup culture, like I don't know, just that it reminds me sort of like when people say they're going on a diet for 3 months or they're doing sober October or dry January, and as soon as February 1st comes, they're getting wasted. It's like, what was the point of doing dry January then? Like it's supposed to bring about change in your actions and how you have a relationship with that thing. And I think, it just misses the point.
Yeah, and it's funny that we're talking about run clubs like this, but it is becoming something that's it's almost becoming foundational in the running community now because it's everywhere, it's popping up everywhere, it's all the craze, it's getting a lot of people into running at the very basis of it, but with that, it's almost a facade in some cases for a lot of the things that are wrong with the world and that are bad in the world that I think shouldn't really be encouraged, like you said. And I think a lot of that comes from Instagram posts and viral reels from a group like Cool Down Running, where it's almost encouraged and it's almost like it's expected that you are there to pull or have some riz or it's funny like having that come out of my mouth, but it's like if people really wanted to run or get better at running, that's not really what I would want to be there for at all, especially as a married man now. But in any case, like if I was I would go there to meet people. I wouldn't go to there to hook up with people. And I think that it's demonstrative. It's not it doesn't affect running in a positive way.
Yeah. It's good if it introduces people to, but you have to look at, does it keep people engaged with the thing without having to add in more of this other stuff? Like, if what's getting people to run is all these other aspects, then it's losing the root of the thing. I saw these two wedding videographers and photographers talk about this, where there's this massive shift happening in the wedding industry where people approaching like a venue and photographers, it's more about how it will look and show up on social media than how it will actually be like a personalized event that's going to like be memorable. And that to me is sort of what this run community culture has gotten to, where it's like, it's more about what is going to show up online opposed to what actually is going to be meaningful in person. And I'm sure people will disagree with us. I'm sure there's somebody who can be like, I go to this run club and I love it. It gets me. It's like, we're not talking to you. Okay. If that works for you, great. But I think, the focus on the running, let's not lose sight that, running has good foundational elements that will better your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, that's why I'm so torn on like wanting to start something like that. And I think I'm leaning more towards starting more of a training group with a consistent group of guys, that has nothing to do with, trying to make it look like on social media more than it is, or trying to be more, I don't know, looking like we're more, because I feel like at some of these run clubs, I feel like it gets into when they're trying to promote something, it gets into trying to get as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Rather than having like a quality group that's getting together and actually knows each other in and out and that wants to spend time with each other. It's just it's appealing to the masses and getting as many people as possible to make it look like it's more than it is.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's more of a shell.
It's like, how well do you know the people there?
Exactly. And with that, like I don't know if I could see myself doing that, because if I wanted to lead a run club, I'd want to be 100% invested in it. And I think I would go down the deep end of, recruiting people to come join the club, come run with us on Wednesday nights. And then like, what are my motives at that point? You know, especially if I want to appeal to like certain brands to bring them in and stuff. Like, you have to have a certain probably amount of people that you have there for them to make it worthwhile for them. But then it's like, do you really care about the people that you're recruiting, or do you care about, what it looks like to an outside party? Yeah, how you could leverage them, exactly. Which I know that has to be a natural like feeling for people that lead these run clubs, and I feel for them, and I know that like if they're genuinely good people, like they probably have to deal with that, that trade-off themselves too. But if you fully like lose yourself in that, I feel like it's at a cost to what like the people are actually coming for. And it's not really a long-term solution. It's a good short-term solution to get people there and to get brands' eyes on your run club. But if you want to have like long-lasting, genuine relationships, I think that, there needs to be more running and less extracurriculars that involve some of the things that I would consider bad, like the hookup culture and the drinking beer afterward. I just don't think that, like, for me, like, honestly, I just don't see how those like coincide with running like clubs and those. I know, like, obviously, like, you do your beer miles, you do drink NA beers, you drink normal beers when you're doing your normal beer miles, you drink beer, but like it doesn't need to coincide directly with the run clubs and like how one should get involved. That shouldn't be like the reason one should want to be involved with a run club.
Right. Yeah.
I know
I
this has
think
been this has been a huge rant fest and session.
yeah,
But
we'll jump off it. But I think the training group is a good idea for what you're looking for too, because like we talked about in last episode, running is such a solo endeavor, and trying to find a way to incorporate a team aspect. And I know we talked about that being a part of like a crew, but when you're out there with a group of guys or a group of girls or whoever's in there with you, let's say it's 10 of you and you all are focusing on different races that you have lined up, at least once a week you can come together and like work together even though you're working on separate goals. So I encourage you to do that, because that sounds like a good way to incorporate the team aspect to what we were kind of jiving on last week.
yeah, precisely. And one more thing on that before we jump to the next is I've found that I definitely grow more just from being around, good training partners and people that I like training with, rather than going to a run club to, be on their social media to make it look like I'm involved,
Right,
to make
right,
it look
right.
like I am ingrained in the community in some way, to have a finger on the pulse. I feel much better when I'm with a, genuine, authentic group of guys that want to go to the well with me, or just want to be out there training with me and BSing around, but like we can have a good quality interaction together, rather than having our 3 mile run, go to the bar, and it feels like it's not as intimate. It feels like it's hollow,
Yeah.
in most cases, which I don't know if it starts with like the people, or it starts with definitely starts with the people, but yeah, I think it's just kind of getting to where we're at with social media these days, and that could be our next topic of like, with that being said, social media is an integral part of, what we do as athletes nowadays, and how we portray our image, and how we, show like our authenticity and genuinity through a screen. And I think that you could take off with that, and talk about some of your social media and your strategy nowadays and what you're doing.
Yeah, I have had a genuine shift in my approach to it the last couple of weeks, specifically with TikTok, and because that's been the app that's been hardest for me to grow on. And I think I was coming at it from an angle of trying to show people how great I am, like ego driven, of like, look at this insane challenge that I'm doing. Like, you should follow me because I'm great. And I was putting a lot of emphasis and pressure on that. And what I shifted more to was trying to tell more of like my story from just like day-to-day things that I'm experiencing, the battles that I'm going through, but also trying to find a way to incorporate and shine a light on other people. I have been, I've re-engaged with my faith. I've been going to these different men's groups that have talked about service more, and I just tried to take that shift into my social media and trying to keep that. Like, I thought that if I tell people the things that I'm doing, then it would inspire people to do the same. But what I've learned is the farther that I've gone and the deeper that I've gone in the runs that I've done, people have disconnected themselves to it, because they can't, a lot of people can't fathom doing Calendar Club or running from Chicago to Windsor or St. Paul to Chicago. Like, people think that's super cool, but then them applying the things I'm doing doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because they wouldn't imagine themselves doing that. And so what I've tried to do is take the concepts and the baseline things, principles that I believe in, like having consistency, like not focusing so much on how you feel in the moment, but taking action anyway. And that's not to say that you shouldn't listen to your emotions. I think it's important to take how we feel over a longer period of time in reflection and say, like, okay, 6 months, a year, did I actually enjoy the process of running? Is this thing for me or not? And I think that's a better approach than saying, like, man, I don't feel like going for a run today, I'm just not going to run. And I think those have spoken more to the everyday person because I still go through that. I still battle with that, even at the level I'm at. And I know I've been battling with that from the beginning. And I know that that person who runs a 12-hour marathon also goes through that as well. And so trying to find the through line of the things that connect what I'm doing, that connect with what everybody else is also going through, no matter where they are at the process. I found that that has been not only helpful for me to feel inspired to create more, but also it's like analytically, it's shown on the views and the followers, like that has been reaching people in a more profound way. Because if I can continue to say, like, this is something I'm battling through and I'm going to continue moving forward, and this is something that I know you're battling with and you can keep going, I think that is a much better message that I am kind of turning to. So that's been my strategy lately, and trying to also shed a light on like we talked about last week or the week before about like Ned Brockman's 1,000-mile run, like actually bringing attention to that and letting people know that there's other people that are doing cool things, not just me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so those are some of the things that I've been taking over the last 2 weeks. And it's not only been helpful from a analytical standpoint, but it's actually helped me to be more engaged with other people outside of myself, which I think has been just like, it's made me think less about me, which I think is always a good thing.
Yeah. I guess with that, the social media strategies that I've like not had really is because I haven't really had any social media strategy ever. And I think there's a multitude of factors there. Given the following I have and the audience I have, I think that I recognize that most of the people that know what I do and see what I do and interact with what I do know me in person and have known me since middle school, high school, college. That's where most of my following is. So like the posts that I make are more like Facebook posts where it's like geared towards updating people on my life and where I'm at and what I'm doing. And I think that it kind of puts a handcuff on me because I want to post more about like what I'm doing on a daily basis, what I'm like doing day in, day out to get to the level where I want to be, the professional ultra running level. But like kind of like what you had mentioned, if you're doing that, I feel like there's so few people that resonate with that in some cases it doesn't feel like it's worth my time, but it's also something that I would want to see myself. Right. So I know that this is something that we've kind of talked about with some of our like FKT challenges and our other like yearly challenges, where it's hard to find people like us or that like to do the things that we do to the extreme level. So I like want to gear some of my stuff towards that on social media and what I'm doing. But in the process, kind of what we were talking about, the group runs, you know, the masses and appealing to the masses, kind of has a, I don't know, it has a, almost like an overarching feel on me where I'm like, almost like, well, will most people even care, or most people even resonate with this, or will it help most people in some way or another if they're going through something similar but at a scale that's much smaller? So I think that's kind of just something that I've just battled with and almost led me to just being stagnant in some ways, where I'm just like, you know what, it doesn't really matter like what I post. Having no strategies is better than not posting at all. So I might as well just post something random here and just put it out there. Because like, I don't really want to, you know, sell anything. I don't really want to shill anything, unless I, you know, totally believe in it. I think it's quality. I think it's a brand I believe in. But now I guess I'm going down the rabbit hole of.
Well, I want to,
why.
yeah, I want to pause here for a second because,
It's like a moral dilemma I'm kind of stuck in because
well,
I feel like no matter what I do, I'm almost against myself in some way or another.
I think this is a very powerful opportunity that we have and you have, because what you're saying right now is something that I hear a lot from people of like, I don't know what to post. You know, I have friends from high school or college that are following me. They don't really want to hear about the things that I want to talk about now. So like there is going to be at least one person listening to this that is thinking the exact same thing that you're thinking, and they don't know where to begin. So first, I'd say this is an opportunity for you to put yourself out there and test things, knowing that somebody listening to this is feeling the same way you're feeling. And you can show them through your actions that this is how it's going and this is what's working, what's not working. So that would be one thing. The second thing is you mentioned wanting to see things on social media. Like what are things you'd want to see on social media? Like one, what are those things and why would you want to see them?
Yeah, I think specifically, I'd just like to see how people's like training is going day in day out, if they're like shooting towards a specific goal, or how they're like specifically training for that goal day in day out, and like kind of compare, but not necessarily pull too much from, but more just like because I'm curious.
Yeah.
If you're at the level that you are, like what do you do day in day out? Like Courtney DeWalter, she never posts about her training. Like I'm curious about that. I want
Right.
to see like what she's doing on a daily basis. And for me, I it's like I want to show that right now and like what I'm doing, but it's funny because I feel like it doesn't matter until I make it big.
So that's the
You
whole
know?
point of this podcast.
And that's why we're doing
though.
this podcast.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So I'm gonna push on you a little bit, and because I think this is exactly why we started this podcast, because we don't want to wait until you get to the Courtney
Yes,
DeWalter.
exactly.
We want to see this right now. So what would that be the thing that's stopping you most? Is like you don't think that people care, like you don't think you're big enough. Like what is it in your mind that's holding you back from posting about it right now or talking about it right now?
Honestly, it feels like people wouldn't care, and I can see that why they wouldn't, because it's kind of an outlandish, far-fetched thing in a lot of people's belief. If they're not in my shoes and they don't feel what I feel right now,
Yeah.
and they don't feel the momentum that I feel right now, they don't feel like the I don't know, the spirit that I have in me right now. It's hard to communicate that through a screen and by action. I think that it would take quite a bit of cinematography and and like in sound design to fully communicate how I feel in some ways. So maybe that's like something I could get into, because the raw organic videos I feel like communicate things well in certain ways, but with like what I'm doing, it's hard for people to know and feel exactly what I'm doing with just my words, and like some of my actions.
Right, but at this current time, I hear what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying, but also understand nobody is ever going to fully understand. And
That's true.
at the current time, you're not even giving them an opportunity to understand. Like
That's true.
I would get that if you have been putting stuff out there and you're like, man, this stuff just isn't working, no one's listening. Well, one, it might just not be finding the right audience in this current time, and there could be ways to tweak and adjust the ways you're going about it. But
Yeah.
right now, you're not even giving people the opportunity to understand. And I think waiting until you have that like $5,000 budget to make the epic documentary that you want to see, that it takes time and really gets people in to that moment with you. I think just talking about it daily gives people the opportunity to get them 5, 10, 20% there, even if it's not the full 100% that you want to feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah, because I feel like in some way or another, we all want to be felt and heard and understood in some ways. I think that's just naturally, as humans, we're inclined to feel that way, because life can be lonely. It can be, feel like you're not. So I think that's a good point. Like, I haven't been doing a good enough job of giving people the chance to even understand or feel how I feel. And I feel like a lot of people could resonate, but like, given where I'm at, like, I'm not giving myself the chance to.
You recently ran the Black Canyons, right?
That's coming up, yeah. The last one I ran, Grindstone 100. Yeah.
Grindstone. So you just placed third at Grindstone. What advice would you give someone who wants to place third at Grindstone that is just starting out on their running journey? What advice would you give to them?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing that we've kind of talked about lately is I first think that you should be consistent with your training. I know that you've been preaching it lately on your social media like crazy, which is awesome, and it's kind of firing into me. But I think with that, you also kind of need to have that goal in mind, or your specific goal in mind, throughout your training as a whole. I think that you need to have that North Star, that North Light at like the top of your priorities, as you're going through all your training, as you're shoveling down the food that you don't want to eat.
Yep.
Because it might feel like you're full already. As you're going out for another run in your training plan, or maybe you're just going out for another run because it feels right. You have to have that goal in mind as you do it, for it to fully come into fruition. And I strongly believe in seeing a moment, not just in your like imagination, but in your head before it comes true. And that's something that I kind of visualized before I had ran many times over and over and over again. And that's kind of like all I could think about when I ran. I knew it would come true because I could see it and I could feel it, and I know what that would. I envisioned a bit more people at the finish line kind of cheering me on, but going through, it's like you kind of have to almost envision yourself in that moment, and what people are going to be there, what's the ground going to feel like, what gear you're going to have on, the sweat going down your eyes, and put yourself there before you can be there. And for someone that I guess that's just starting out running, to get to this point, it's going to take a long time unless you are a truly gifted athlete, runner, someone that's had previous running experience. If you're just literally starting out running, know that you have to be fully invested for a long time for you to attain a result that I guess, a podium result at a race that is competitive, I would say. And to know that, and to not be afraid of that, and to not shy away. Like 2.5 years ago when I started running, I could never really envision myself here until I kept being consistent with my running and kept seeing myself progress as I went on. Even 6 months ago, I couldn't have even pictured myself really there in, I was having some doubts, but there was a cord of belief that ran through, and a vision that kept with me and kind of led me through my training. And I know I'm spiraling with this, and
no, this is perfect. This is gonna draw on. This is gonna draw on so nicely. Keep going.
Here we go.
Yep.
But I guess it's getting in a lot of training, a lot of volume, a lot of miles underneath your legs at the basis. Because if you're gonna be out there for, like I was, 22 hours, you're gonna want to feel comfortable being out there for a long time. And what I did kind of lead into that to make myself more comfortable was getting in 3 to 4 to 6 hour runs consistently on the weekends when I had the time to do so. Now I have unlimited time being unemployed. But hey, if you're looking to hire and you're running coming out there, we're open. But I got comfortable doing that. It's a night start race as well. So I would get comfortable, running at night, making sure that you're comfortable running over terrain that's technical, rooty, rocky at night where you're looking at your feet a lot, but the only light you have is your headlamp. So it's kind of like a spotlight, and that's kind of like what helped me in a way, having that tunnel vision for 12 hours. I could kind of go to the cave and just kind of chip away, and there wasn't as many distractions. So I would get comfortable not having any distractions while you run, really kind of just having a place or trail you go that's quiet, that might be dark, might be eerie. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Don't do that if you're not comfortable doing that. That's not necessary. But the biggest thing is just getting comfortable on your feet for a long time. And one of the bigger things that we had talked about in another episode was what I had worked on with my coach leading up to it, and something that I hadn't really implemented in my training before, and why I don't think I was that successful at some of my previous ultra races, the two prior, was that I wasn't as comfortable running uphill. I was just comfortable hiking and kind of getting into a groove and power hiking like most people do. But at this race, I took advantage of my newfound ability to run uphill consistently, and no matter if it was maybe seemingly slower than what I could power hike, it led me to get into my running stride a bit quicker than I would have, and transition faster than I would have for my power hike, which I know we're getting into the weeds here, but this is something like I'd want to hear if I was a listener and I wanted to, be in this position like you had said, and have a chance to podium at a UTMB World Series race or a competitive race. Like, I would want to know that you need to work on your running economy, running uphill, and implement intervals where you're running faster than you ever would running uphill in the race, so that you're comfortable running, at a slower speed for a longer amount of time. So what that looks like in practice, for example, like what Hayden and I did, and this is something that you could look at on my Strava. I record everything on my Strava. I'm an open book, so if you want to see anything that I do or see like the workouts I'm doing, the paces I'm running, a lot of times it's not impressive. I'm not really doing hero workouts or hero runs. I run a lot of my miles slower than you'd think someone that could podium at a race would. But in most cases, when I'm doing workouts, they're intentional, they're focused. And in the cases, leading up to the race, we do intervals of, 5, 10, 15, 12, 20 minutes where I'm kind of putting in that chunk, an uphill segment that I can hold for that amount of time, like almost as fast as I can for that amount of time. So a lot of times, like, I'd go a little too quick and realize that. And, that's normal because you don't know how fast you can go at a certain grade for 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes right off the bat. You don't know that. You just go based off feel and kind of where your heart rate's at. If you have the means to have a GPS watch that is an accurate heart rate, or a heart rate monitor, and it kind of gives you a good read of where you're at. But with that being said, like, you don't truly know how fast you can go for that time, so you kind of have to toy around with it. Like, I was uncomfortable going uphill for 10 minutes at a fast speed because I didn't know how fast I could go. I didn't know if I would have enough energy in me for the next 2-3 reps of that 10-minute segment. So you kind of have to toy around with it, feel it out. And doing that for 2 months after my prior, I'd say, not failure, but failure in my eyes of a race in July, doing some of those things where I'm running uphill consistently and not trying to hike a step, led me to feel a lot more comfortable at Grindstone and run past people that were hiking and past people within the first 20-30 miles, and put myself in a position to have enough runway to catch the amount of people I needed to. So I started out first aid station, for example, 45th place, which is pretty deep back if you want to be in contention. But with that being said, I did learn a huge lesson at the 100-mile distance, and kind of knew going into this that patience is totally key, and the race can come back to you if you let it. So at that point, I was confident in my abilities to continue running my own race and to, not necessarily compete with others. I was just, talking with people, kind of just going as I felt comfortable, keeping my heart rate below 170 as I'm running uphill, as my coach had mentioned, making sure that I'm not getting, lactic, obviously. If I had gone over 170 beats per minute, I would start hiking until I went down, and then start running again as I felt comfortable. And after about 20 miles, I found myself in, 15th, around 15th place. I'd passed around 30 people in that uphill section of about 15 miles, just because I had the running economy and the ability to continue going uphill. And that was night and day from the race 2 months ago, because I'd implemented the strategy with my coach of, doing intervals consistently and hill sprints. So at that point, I'd found myself already at mile 20 in, 15th, 20th place. And I knew there's a lot of time left, and just continuing to run my own race, talk with people, kind of jib jab and BS and just say, like, are these guys going out too fast? Like, a lot of them were going out faster than the previous, course record from the year prior. So we were just curious about that, kept running. And by the time we had finished this downhill section of about 10-ish miles, I got to a point where I was already at mile 33 and in 6th or 7th place. And at that point, I knew I had well more than half the race left to go and plenty of time to catch anyone I need to. So at that point, I feel like I almost, without having it in the bag, I had it in the bag because of how I felt in that moment and how I prepared my body to handle that amount of time on feet. But with these ultra races in the mountains, and we're going down a whole rabbit hole.
Let's take a pause because
time out.
I want to get to something. So you started off really broad and then you got hyper specific, which I love.
Yeah.
The back end of that is really geared towards for the people that have first taken that foundational piece. And I think what's interesting, if you go back and listen to what you started off saying, it's all of the things that you would have told someone just starting out, like consistency, like doing things that are uncomfortable, time on feet, the reps, getting used to uncomfortable situations, like scarping down a whole bunch of food and then going, like, stuff you're not used to feeling and going through and doing that. And it's all of that advice is the exact advice that you yourself are not currently following with the social media. And I think the biggest lie that we tell ourselves, and I'll put my hand up and I'll give you an example of, we tell ourselves that running is the best teacher for life. And I think we can lose sight of that by just applying that to things in running and not actually transferring that over to stuff that's going on in our life. One example for me, I'll be super vulnerable right now, like pornography has been a big issue in my life. And that's something that I took a look at 2 months ago, that I've now taken the lessons that I've learned in running to then say, okay, if I actually believe that running is my best teacher, then I have to take the lessons that I'm learning in running and take that to things that are uncomfortable that I know I need to change. And so when you look at that first, half of what you're saying, that broad perspective, those are the same things that you yourself can take advantage of being consistent with the social media, doing things that you're not totally comfortable with. Like, it's all across the board. And so that's what I wanted to bring it back to is like, I appreciate the hyper specific because I think someone listening to this is past that beginner stage that wants to know those things. But for someone just starting out in running or someone who's just starting out in social media, it's really just the same. It's consistency. It's learning to deal with the discomfort. It's it's getting in those reps, knowing that you're going to have off days, but you're going to learn from those off days. And so that's what I wanted to bring it back to, is like
you had a plan for it. I was like, how am I going to rope this back?
Oh yeah. Once I heard you talking, I was like, everything you're saying right now is everything that you need to hear. And it's funny because I do that all the time too. It's like, man, if someone were to ask me how to get started in running, it's like the things that I'm struggling with in life, those are the same concepts that I need to hear myself. So I'm going to push and encourage you to continue. At least, I know you had posted something the other day, and so just push on you to keep doing that, because I think that would be really important for the people listening to watch and listen and learn from your growth in, because that's what we're here for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and another step that goes with it that I think I'm being a bit hesitant more about nowadays is that, like, the fact that I'm currently unemployed and posting now, like, I feel like, is that like a bad, that's not a bad image, right? Like, I feel
No.
like it's like, I don't know why I'm thinking like that. I feel like there's a negative connotation to it when I shouldn't be uncomfortable with that, you know?
What,
It's
like
like,
people thinking that you have all this free time and you're not doing the work to get your
exactly,
work done?
exactly, yeah. And that's like kind of some things that I'm like wrestling
Let's
with
if
for
if you had
no,
a job, wouldn't, because this is something I wrestled with when I had my job, is would me over posting make it look like I'm not exceeding in my job to my employer? So like no matter which way you slice it, you can always find an excuse
yeah,
for
no,
why you're
and
not
that's,
doing it.
I'm glad you
So
said that, because based on like what I was posting before even, and what I was doing before, and you know how active I was on Strava,
yeah,
I think my employer brought up that they thought my priority with running was higher than my priority of working. I'm
exactly.
like,
You want to be a professional ultra runner, then you better be putting more time into making that a reality. You know, don't
yes,
ever shy away from, you're in this in between, you're unemployed, not by your own doing, and
yeah,
you're going to take advantage of every opportunity and moment you have. And I think that shows your dedication. Don't worry so much. It's easier said than done, but the more emphasis you can put on you infusing what you believe out into the world and less about how it's going to look or perceive, because that's what we just talked about with the group runs. It's like they're more focused on how it's perceived by other people. Don't let that perception of how it might be perceived affect what you want to do. So I'm going to keep pushing on you on that.
I love that. Yeah, I need it too. So I really appreciate it, and I know that there's going to be someone out there that needs the push too, and
Yeah.
needs to be held accountable, because I would be that listener, and I would be like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
I like heard that, I'd be like, I needed that, dude.
Yeah.
So that's good to hear, and I really appreciate you having some perspective, because I know that you've been at this for quite some time now, and pushing different buttons, pulling different levers, and experimenting with things, and putting yourself out there. And I really respect that, and I really think it takes a lot more than people see. Just internally, it's there's a lot going on in there that fires before you press publish, or that before you record a video, or before you, like, while you're stringing an edit together, like you're watching it over a billion different times to make sure things were kind of were strung together the way you want them to be. So like there's a lot more that goes into that people don't see, and it looks simple, and it looks like just a lot, but yeah, I really respect that you have taken the steps to put yourself in uncomfortable positions a lot, and something that I kind of need to take from my running and translate better over to my
Everyday
life.
Yeah.
Everyday life.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get comfortable. It's easy to feel that and want to just, have that thing to almost fall back on that's comfortable when you're doing uncomfortable things. But you kind of need to keep yourself in that oven and just like stay hot. And otherwise, I think the scales start to tip one way, and it's harder and harder to make yourself uncomfortable as you continue to feed yourself with more comfort. So awesome, dude. I guess with that, and on the discomfort note, Natalie and I have been itching to do
Hey, yo, there we go.
itching to have I'm kidding. Itching to do the rim to rim to rim trail in the Grand Canyon. It's something that I feel like every single trail runner in Utah does in October. It's like they're making a pilgrimage to the Grand Canyon. It seriously is. It's like you ask anyone, it's
Really?
like, oh yeah, next weekend I'm going to do the rim to rim to rim, or in 2 weekends I'm doing the rim to rim to rim. So I'm like, we've been wanting to do it. It's something that we had on the calendar to do at some point. It just plans fell through, flights situation, rental car, that type of thing, like money situation. But I think that we have decided, or partially decided, because we're pretty impulsive in general, to do it Thanksgiving weekend, which is good because we can't really fly back home given the flights are $350 to $400. I mean, we do have the financial means to do so, but given where we're at right now, and given that the potential and most likely case of us flying to Austin for that running event, that's another cost. We'll probably not fly home for Thanksgiving and then fly back for Christmas at some point to be back with family then. So that gives us the opportunity to use the Thanksgiving weekend to do something fun. And I'd been researching the rim to rim to rim for quite some time now, a few years, and been looking at it a lot more last night. And coincidentally, like, friends that I have here just commented on a Strava post I made yesterday, like, that I brought it up saying I was having FOMO. A few people commented saying, like, let's do it, I'm in. And then someone commented, let's do it Thanksgiving weekend, or my husband and I are doing it Thanksgiving weekend. So, like, the opportunity's there. I know it'll be probably cold. The North Rim usually gets some snow. South Rim probably does too at that point. But we're not really afraid of the cold or a storm. We can deal with that situation. But I think it would be a good opportunity because it's one of the 7 wonders of the world. It's an insane environment. 44-ish miles and like 11,000 feet of vert. You drop down from the South Rim, like 5,000 some feet, run across the Grand Canyon, go up like another 6,000 feet up to the North Rim, and then come back the same way you came. And it's something that's been done in the FKT space.
Is that Jim Walmsley?
Quite a bit. Jim Walmsley has it. I think he's got it the rim to rim to rim in sub 6 hours. I believe it's like 5:54, which is pretty insane.
What's the mileage on it again?
It's about like 44 or 45 miles, but it's like 11 to 12,000 feet of vertical gain. And it's basically just the 2 bouts where you're going up at 5,000 feet at a time of like switchbacks and grades that are like 10 to 15%. So a lot of running, not much hiking involved in that one. But I guess with that being said, there is a current attempt on the Arizona Trail right now that goes through the Grand Canyon. Mike McKnight, I think this is his 3rd attempt to do so. And it's a pretty big endeavor. It's from the border of Utah to the border of Mexico, across Arizona, 817 or some miles, about 115,000 feet of vertical gain. And the current FKT holder is Joe Stringbean McConaughey. He's got it in 13 days and 3 hours.
And that was recently, right? Just like
that was
a month
fairly
or 2
recently.
ago?
It was fairly recently. I don't think he did. No, he didn't do it this year. I don't think. But during his attempt, he was going through like snow, almost snow drift. Like if you're from Minnesota and you're listening to this, and you have like the snow drift push to the sidewalk, he's going through like 2 to 3 feet of just like post holing for a lot of the time near the North Rim of the Grand Canyon. So hopefully Mike McKnight doesn't run into that and he stays healthy. I know he's dealing with like a bone spur or something, but hopefully his raw milk gets him through it in less than 13
Do you know
days.
what his nutrition is for it?
I don't. No, I know that he's big on the raw milk and maybe raw meat. No, I don't think he's eating raw meat on the run. But Seems like he's got a pretty big crew invested in that. So that's one of the things that I think started off this weekend. And there's a lot of events this weekend that kind of were spectacles and mesmerizing to watch, one of which was Javelina 100. That one was huge. I mean, now they're kind of taking the marketing as it being like an R-rated event. There's a award for best ass, so like it's getting kind of
Really?
out there in terms of what's going on. I'm not sure if I really, if I can really, at this point in my life,
Best.
yeah, I don't know if I can really, not support it. I'll support it, but like, yeah, it's quite the event. It's a golden ticket race in the Western States Golden Ticket Series. There's about 6-7 races in that series per year, which get the top 2 to 3 people into Western States with a guaranteed entry. And usually the race director is there for Western States, asking them the second after they cross the finish line in first or second place if they want to go to Western States. Like after like dying through a effort, they're like, "Oh, do you want to go to Western States?" Like, dude, I need to cool off and think about
Give me a
this
minute.
decision. But anyway, it was super hot, 100-degree weather, or just about 97 degrees in heat, no coverage in the race, 100-mile race, about 5 laps. So first lap was the longest, and the following 4 were about 19. And even with those conditions, and racing is getting so fast and developing at such a clip right now, I think with the amount of information that's being shared and people that are being, selfless and kind of, sharing what they're doing and the science behind it. Things are getting so fast. Like David Roche, he ended up winning it, taking his golden ticket in 12 hours and 44 minutes, running 100 miles at that pace, no matter where you're at, is
Which
super
is
impressive.
1 minute short. I was looking at the results from last year. Last year's winner was 12:43.
Yeah. So with the conditions he had, he ran an insanely fast race, and that's his second 100-mile race of all time, and second in about 6 or 7 weeks when he went and set the course record at Leadville this year, that had stood for 15 to 18 years, whatever it was.
And that was his first 100-miler, right?
Leadville was, and yeah, set the course
Yeah.
record, and he came back 6 to 8 weeks later, whatever it was, at Javelina here, and just destroyed that. Now he's gonna go to Western States. Jeff McGavro got second, about 10 minutes back, so also an insane race from him. And then Dan Green was a few minutes back, and those 3, I think, just from this race alone, have 3 of the top 5 times of all time at the course, which is, brings out the most competition ever. So things are getting fast. On the women's side, Riley Brady, Hannah Allgood, and then I think it was, I don't know who was in third place for the women, but they had a super competitive race and super fast as well. Cool to see that. Riley Brady getting her golden ticket, going to Western States. I know she'd been there before, but Hannah Allgood, it was her first 100-mile race, so good to see her have a good finish. And Debo ran with her a bit. I know Debo, Dylan Bowman, he's coached by her, so cool that he got a ran with her. So I guess flipping back to FKTs, I wanted to touch on Javelina a little bit because that's one of the bigger races here this time of year in the States. But flipping back to FKTs, there's a few that we have on our radar. I know Dowdle is more interested in them, but there's a few that I have had my sights set on for some time as well, and one that we're familiar with that I would like to touch on. But you can get into it a bit more if you'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, after debriefing before the record button went on, I think I have to readjust the Duluth one. So the Duluth to Twin Cities run is a run that I've done now 4 times. It's 160 miles from the aerial lift bridge in Duluth, Minnesota, down to, I don't know, we've ended it, the Stone Arch Bridge is a good ending point as well. 160 miles, And of course, my brain thought that it might be possible to do that in sub 24, which would be 9-minute pace. And, I'm like, 9-minute pace sounds doable. But then, Alex humbled me and was like, you're a maniac for thinking that's even possible.
Yeah.
But I looked at maybe a potential reroute of going Duluth down to the bridge in Stillwater, which would be 140 miles, which for those who kind of know FKTs in the weird world of ultra running, Oz Perlman, he did Montauk to Manhattan, which is 130 miles in 22 hours, which is still ridiculous. Like, this would be another 10 miles, so at least it's in the wheelhouse of what is possible. But I've always looked at trying to do that race or that route faster than I have. My first time ever doing it with no prior experience, I did it in 42 hours. And then each year's just gotten progressively slower because I've taken on less support and pulled a stroller. And so it's really taken over a 3-day period. But I think it would be cool to go back and try and do something fast. And as the conversation around the Arizona Trail, who I was thinking you were talking about the Colorado Trail that was recently broken. That was recently broken by, I'm forgetting his name.
I think it was broken like 2 or 4 different times this summer just because of the amount of different variations. But I think the most impressive one of them all was, I think it's Kyle Curtin. I think he set the first time on the Colorado Trail sub 7 days, I believe, or sub 6 days, which is insane. It's like, 450 or some miles in the high alpine of Colorado, when thunderstorm season, all the wildfire season, all that.
But the Arizona Trail and the Colorado Trail brought up, a lack of love for the Midwest with the Ice Age Trail, which, I guess
Let's put it on the map. Corey Waltering, our guy.
Yeah, the trail it says it's the FKT is 850 miles. It says the trail, or 823 miles. The trail winds over 1,000 miles, but it's across the state of Wisconsin. And the Ice Age Trail, for those who have not been on it, is just as gnarly as, if not in some cases more gnarly than the Colorado or Arizona Trail, just purely based on like the rocks and roots, and there is some elevation there as well. So that's something that I just, it wouldn't be something I'd do in the near future, but I think it would be interesting to try and get some love for the Midwest, as it seems like all the best trail runners and attention goes to some of these bigger races in Colorado. And that's why, part of the reason I love the fact that I'm doing Arrowhead this year is I want to bring attention to the Midwest. I want people to put some respect on our name. And I think there is a lack of love or appreciation or respect for some of these Midwest trail FKTs or races that, we're not dealing with much elevation, but running 135 miles in minus 40 degree weather, not many people are going to be able to do that, can do the western states of the world.
Yeah.
So
you know what I want to see you do now that I think about it?
What's that?
On the same chord, a through run of the Superior hiking trail. Have you ever thought about that? I think that would be a good one. Because
yeah, that one. So the guy who won Arrowhead last year, Alan Chapman, he's a geology professor at Macalester. He's a guy that I've run with a few times in some, actually an Embrace North run and plunge. He set the FKT for the Superior hiking trail, and I think he did it in like 4 days, which is just insane. I forget what the total distance of that is, but I think it's like 200 something miles.
Yeah, on here it's showing 290 miles.
And do you know the elevation?
Let's see.
It is not flat.
It's not easy. No, not at all. It's rocky. I mean, for Minnesota, it's mountainous,
Yeah.
for sure. There's a bunch of overlooks. It's like almost like the Appalachian Trail, where most of it is, a green tunnel, and there's
Yep.
not as much views. But when you do peek out and you can see the Lake Superior,
Like,
and
whoa.
its beauty,
We're pretty high up.
it's insane. Yeah.
What were some of the FKTs you were looking at?
Well, I think to start, one that I think we might have mentioned briefly on this podcast that we've done before is the Twin Cities Grand Rounds.
Yeah.
I just feel this need, given that, I have this, it's probably sinful because I'm feeling prideful about it, but I feel drawn to taking back the cities that I was raised in.
Yep.
And, um,
So for context, Proc and I,
Yeah.
we set the FKT at 12 hours and 5 minutes, and then a few months later, someone came out and did it in like 10 and a half hours or 10 hours. So
yep, Nick Horton.
Nick Horton, and to be fair, Proctor is a much more accomplished runner than I when it comes to speed and keeping that speed over a longer period of time. So in many ways, if I wasn't there with him, it would have been a much quicker pace. But also with that, we did it on New Year's Eve, and it was cold and snowy. And this guy did it when it was much warmer out in April or May. So there's a few factors there. I already told Proc if when he comes back, I'd be more than happy to help crew and make sure that he gets not only gets that FKT, because I know I can, but absolutely obliterate it. So
Yeah, so it I appreciate that. If we haven't said before enough, it's a figure eight around Minneapolis, about 31, 32 miles, and then St. Paul for 31 or 32 miles to make a 100K, or about 62 to 63 to 64 miles, depending on your watch. And it kind of hits a lot of like the biggest and best running routes in the Twin Cities, which a lot of people train on. A lot of people have, trained for big races, big events on a lot of these trails.
it's all pavement, by the way.
And it's all on pavement, correct? Yes. Although it's, on the Grand Rounds trails, it's
It's
all
pavement.
on pavement, correct? And, some cases sidewalk, some cases street, sometimes, asphalt. It varies, but it goes around the chain of lakes in southwest Minneapolis, around all of them. And then, one of the other highlights is the Mississippi River. Running beside that is glorious, and you probably get about 20-30 miles going from, downtown Minneapolis all the way past downtown St. Paul along the Mississippi River, which is pretty sweet. So pretty aesthetic route. We started last time around Lake Nokomis, and we went northwestward around the chain of lakes first. I think this time, if I were to do it again, I would probably want to finish with the chain of lakes last, just because I think that that's probably the most enjoyable and fun part. But when we did it, at that point it was five or so in the morning when we got to those lakes, and it was quiet, and that was like another like element that I kind of enjoyed, because these lakes are so popular and everyone's walking, running, biking, rollerblading, dogs are running around. It gets quite busy a lot of the time, no matter the season. So it was kind of cool to see it, when it was quiet. But if I were to do it again, I would probably go, start from Lake Nokomis again in southern Minneapolis, and start going like northeastern towards the river, around, the northern part of St. Paul, wrapping back down, and almost doing it in reverse of what we did, to get a feel for the other way around, just to see how that'd feel. I don't think the time would be affected no matter which way you do it, where you start. It's a relatively flat loop. It's just a matter of like where you feel more drawn to, I guess. But yeah, I think that's one of my radar. As far as routes go in like my region right now, I I honestly don't know if I'm in the shape I'd like to be in to attempt one of them, just because of how highly contested and how good they are,
Yeah.
and how competitive they are. Um, one that I think I could beat, which is a hilarious one that I want to bring light to and share quickly, because I know that we're getting past the hour mark on time. We kind of want to usually wrap it around this point, to save a little bit for the next ones, but we'll always have something to say. There's an FKT pretty close to where I live, not to dox myself, but it's around a roundabout, and this is something that you would kind of get a kick out of.
I don't think I
Um,
like these, dude.
You don't think so? Okay.
No.
So it's called
Tell me about it now.
it's called the Salt Lake City Whale-a-thon, and I think it was created either a year or a few years ago. You do 26.2 miles around a roundabout that is 0.04 in distance each lap. So you do 630 laps around the inside of a roundabout. So there's this big sculpture of a whale that was put in place in the middle of the roundabout. That's like a whale like breaching out and like almost
Yeah.
flying out of the area. If you want to look it up, it's.
I actually think someone sent me this over the weekend. I was like,
Yeah.
dude, I'm not gonna do
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah. So yesterday was the official whale-a-thon. I didn't join, unfortunately, but they host an event there where I think I had seen on their Instagram they have a page called Whale-a-thon, and there was 16 finishers. It was like three people's first marathons. Two ended up going, not thinking they'd do the whole thing. They did the whole thing, and there was a 68-year-old that finished it.
oh my gosh, that's
630 laps in a row around this inner circle of a busy intersection in Salt Lake City proper. So the current FKT, where I'm getting with this is like I could see myself trying to set the new FKT here. It was set this year in March, end of March, and as of now it says 3 hours and 1 minute is the FKT. So if I can run a sub 3 marathon around around this circle, that would be the new FKT there. And it's significant to some. I don't think it's as known as a lot of the other FKTs, but the fact that it's so close and so local and kind of becoming a local legend thing to do, I think it would be fun just to get in the mix and figure it out. But
Can you switch directions at any point?
yes, yeah, you can, because I think otherwise, like, one of your hips or knees might
Just
break from.
Go. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, you might need to have someone there, to almost count the laps for you, because I feel like that would be like the hardest part, is remember what lap you're on. The 630 laps, you're gonna lose the laps at one point.
Well,
or
could
another.
will your watch pick that up, or
I think it looks like it, but yeah, it would take a lot. I mean, unless you if you press lap on your watch 630 times, you could do it.
Yeah, that would.
But I'd
be
probably
painful,
prefer to
though.
have Natalie sitting there at a table with like a little clicker.
Just sit there for 3 hours.
Yeah, but otherwise, like, the FKT is local to me. A lot of them are mountain climbs and almost a sense of mountains that I'm working on it, but I don't think I have the mountain legs to even attempt yet. But it's in progress. We're working on it, and eventually, I think could be doable. But there's one more that I'd like to do that's basically the same distance as a whale-a-thon, although it's not 630 laps. It's the historic Union Pacific Rail Trail segment. There's a segment from Echo, Utah, down to Park City, just east of Salt Lake City, and east of like the Wasatch Range. it's a relatively flat, just rail trail grade, whatever. It might be limestone, crushed limestone. Just a flat one, 26.62 miles. And the current FKT is 2 hours and 48 minutes. So my marathon PR right now is 2:43, 2:42-ish. So that could be in the cards. The only difference with this one is that it's starting at elevation. It starts at 6,900 feet in elevation, which is definitely a factor. And it falls over the course of the FKT, where it gets down to about a mile high in elevation. So you're going net downhill, but you're still running at elevation the whole time. So that's another one I like to try. But yeah, I guess with that, the last thing I wanted to touch on in this episode was potential sponsorships. And I've been in talks. I'm not sure if we mentioned exactly the brand before, but I've been in talks with Merrell.
That's right.
And just through messaging. And, right now, if people aren't familiar with the space or scene, this is around the time where contracts are being written for the next year, the next few years for athletes in the space. Like this is known as contract season around this time, where brands are figuring out who they're re-signing, having conversations with their current athletes, and figuring out how much spend they have to either keep them on, drop them, add more athletes, take away more athletes. So it's kind of like figuring out level setting and figuring out what they can do with what money they have. So that's kind of what I'm in conversation with them about right now. And I don't really expect there to be much more from this as of now. I haven't really proven entirely like what I'm capable of doing with my results yet, but I do think that I'm kind of like a penny stock that will boom eventually, and I really appreciate the fact that they're even like considering like having conversations with me further after these next conversations, the next few weeks. But I guess a big positive from this is that I haven't yet tried out their shoes, so I think they agreed to at least let me try them out and see how I felt about them before I go in, because that's one of the things that when I'm looking for sponsorships and I'm looking for potential partnerships with brands in the future, I really want to believe and trust in the product. And with this one in particular, I've experienced what they can do to support their athletes by like way of social media, seeing like how invested they are in their athletes, how they really appreciate that their athletes are authentic and true to themselves, and not everything is based off their results. I really appreciate that. Like they see them as humans. But I haven't had the opportunity to actually try their products, so that's like one of the biggest things. If I'm going to be an athlete that's sponsored by them in the future or down the road, I'd like to actually run in the product and to race in the product and to train in the product, and to not just do it because it's paying my bills, which I think it's easy to fall victim to that in today's age, especially, and to sell out. And that's something that I don't want to do. I want to stay true to my morals, my values, and kind of hold strong to that. And if I don't really like something, I'd voice my opinion, and hopefully it would change. But if it doesn't, then I'm not going to commit to it, because I wouldn't want to push something that I don't fully believe in 100%. And that's kind of led me to not reach out for some things or apply for certain ambassadorships. But like I really want to just be in a position where I don't feel guilty for what I preach and what I post, and want to feel good about getting people to run, and mostly that's just it. I think that's like the biggest thing, just getting people to run and enjoy that, and to find the benefits there. And if there's like a product or something that I enjoy, like I'll talk about it and say like what the benefits could be, but like I wouldn't want to expect someone to buy something or invest in something that I don't like, but I'm making it seem like I do.
100%.
Which I think is just wrong. And, you know, a check's a check, and people, you know, fall victim to that all the time. But no matter what, I know that, you know, God will provide, and I'm not too worried about that portion. So, but that's not to say that I don't want to be like, I don't want to be lowballed, but I'm kidding. I don't want to be taken advantage of, but I feel like I'm strong enough to realize what value I bring to a brand or a potential partner, and the long-term value that I think sharing the story that I have can bring, and how compelling it can be, and how compelling it will be even more so down the line as like things start to compound, because I think there's a compound interest factor there where things are continuing to go in the right direction and do the right things. And a lot of it is with, you know, God's help and trusting in God and realizing then that, you know, it's not entirely in my hands, and, you know, leaving it up to a higher power. But yeah, so.
That's good to hear. Yeah, you're looking for a mutually beneficial brand partnership, and I think.
And this podcast is open to it too.
Yes.
If anyone's.
So if you've gotten this far in the podcast, we are looking for sponsors. And
not Athletic Greens, though. No. Respectfully.
not Athletic Greens. But if you've gotten this far, that means you have enjoyed this show. And at this point, all 3 of our prior episodes are live on YouTube.
Okay, so you said it. Out. We gotta post them.
I know.
We've been stocking them up.
Stocking.
We better post them before some of the relevancy is lost. But I think no matter what, if people were to listen to them, there's something that you can get from some of these episodes. The rabbit holes, the BSing, like there's some value there, hopefully for you guys. And you know, if you enjoy it, the podcast, let us know. You can either let us know on Instagram if you have our numbers, text us. If you don't, and you have some criticisms or some critiques, please let us know. Like, we want to improve this as much as we can, and make sure that we're sharing stuff that could be valuable to, you know, not just like the everyday listener, but the people that, you know, want to, you know, grow with us and to, you know, could see themselves in a position where they want to be sponsored one day, or want to be professional athletes in some way or another. That's what we're trying to do here, and we're on that journey. We're in the depths for sure, but we'll make it.